don't know. Is it bad that I've balanced my camera onto a bottle of sodium hydroxide? It's cold and wet, and I don't want to go down to the studio and get my tripod, so okay, so you're very lucky you can't see all the mess that's around me, because I am in the middle of actually formulating at the moment. So you join me in my lab, aka my parents' dining room. But at the moment it has been beautifully cleaned and sanitized, as there's just a lot of ingredients hanging about, and bottles and things. At the moment I am actually doing some soap making, which is hence obviously I've got all the lovely sodium hydroxide and everything hanging about. And yes, obviously I'm wearing my proper protective equipment. I've just taken it off to film because I'm vain. Now, in this, no, I need you for this film, so keep your battery. Sorry, my scales are saying they've got a low battery. So I just wanted to do a little video because it's something that I know we get asked about a lot, is to do some videos about actually how you go about formulating cosmetics and so on. And so this little video is just about the equipment that you need to start up sort of a home formulating lab. As you can see, you do not actually need a lab. If you're lucky enough to have a spare room in your house, that's wonderful, but most of us aren't. So I use the dining room here. Take one half of the table, and obviously clean it, and you can sanitize it with a nice little spray bottle of isopropyl alcohol, which I have on my cupboard. You get bottles of this, and I decant it into one of these little spray bottles. You can then spray it on anything that you need to, such as your beakers, your equipment, all of this kind of stuff, which we're going to talk about. But yes, before the batteries die on this, I just want to show before you go there, the very first piece of equipment you will need is these. And the reason I wanted, sorry, I'm upsetting them because they don't like being picked up. Oh dear, I've really upset them. The reason I wanted to show you when they were on, you see, was because of the screen. They really don't like being turned the wrong way up. There we go. So in fact, I'm going to have to show you like this. There we go. Can we see that? Right. Right, so these little scales. Okay, they're off now. So there we go. Yeah, apologise, mine do look very grubby. They are actually clean, although I am in the middle of using them at the moment, but I clean them regularly, but mica actually really stains. So that's yeah, all the weird streaks you can see on it are coloured micas from making eyeshadows and things. Unfortunately, they don't come off. So yes, you can see these have seen some good service. And yes, the scales are absolutely the most important piece of equipment you will use. It's no exaggeration to say that you cannot formulate anything without them, because unless you're only using one ingredient, you obviously cannot tell weight for weight percentage. So I am going to do another little video where we talk about how we do professional formulas. So you can look at that for more information. But yes, formulas obviously will be written in a weight for weight percentage. So in other words, if you make 100 grams, that is how many grams will be in the product. So obviously, unless your 100% of your product is one thing, like a hydrosol-based toner, then you're going to need scales. And more specifically, you're going to need very accurate scales like these ones. The reason I wanted to show you this is that the reason I wanted to show you the display is because they weigh down to 0.01 grams. So if you've got kitchen scales that you use for baking, the more kind of analogue kind, for example, which I know I use, I prefer those for baking, because you don't necessarily have to be very accurate, and that's fine. But with these, obviously, sometimes you will be weighing out 0.01 grams of an essential oil. So you will need to have digital scales, and you will need these ones. Obviously, You do have to weigh everything in grams, obviously. In countries such as this one, we do prefer to use imperial measurements, at least most of us do. Obviously I use them for everything because I don't understand metric measurements, but that's alright, you don't need to because your scales will tell you the answer. But you do need to weigh everything in grams because obviously if you were weighing in ounces, you wouldn't fit the number of decimal places on your screen. And it is obviously very important because of dermal limits for essential oils. And also just for getting your amounts right. For example, here in soap making, I have here obviously my weighed out, my sodium hydroxide, and I have my water, and it's important that I know how much sodium hydroxide and how much water I'm going to mix together, or it wouldn't work very well. And the same with the oils, obviously. You need a proper oil balance. With an emulsion, obviously, you need to work out the ratio of your emulsifier with your amount of oils, waters. Otherwise it's not going to work. So it is very important that you do have accurate scales. So what I would say is, setting up a lab, a little mini formulation lab, it's really inexpensive. You don't need to spend a lot of money on it. But when you're budgeting, I would say if you're going to sort of splash out on anything, I would say your scales. You don't need really expensive ones, but if you find some that are really cheap, do ask yourself, are they really any good? Because you do need them to be accurate. Now, this particular ones, actually, I think I got them on eBay in the end, and they weren't that expensive. I don't think they were more than sort of 20 quid, but I say you do sometimes see them on cheap sites, you know, maybe sort of, oh, here's £2.50 for these lovely scales. Maybe avoid those just because you're going to use these every time you formulate. And if they start going peculiar, you're stuffed until you get some new ones. So I would just a suggestion, if there's one thing that you've got, a piece of equipment that you're going to think, okay, maybe I'll spend a little bit more on that, really make it your scales, just because it is the most important thing that you will use. I do apologise, by the way, if you can hear clicking in the background. I don't know if you can. That is my stove, which is melting my oils for my soap. So yes, if I keep jumping about, that's because I'm nipping out to check on them. I'm melting my butters, I should say. The oils are already obviously liquid. So yes, get yourself a nice set of scales. These they're sometimes called jeweler's scales. They weigh out like pieces as well, and they differ slightly, but basically they always kind of look like this little square thing, and you should just have little buttons. And whilst I'm talking about scales, I will just say, because people just expect you to know this, it is very important that you do know what this little T button actually does, which is the tare button, which will zero your scales. So when you put a beaker on, remember to press that, so that you can weigh out your ingredients accurately, and obviously in between every ingredient if you are putting them in the same beaker. Which we will talk about in a moment. You do also, with the scales, actually, I very rarely use them, but you do get like little trays. I think you get different size ones, which is sort of, you can put on there, and if you wanted to count the number of beads or something, for example, that's what the little pieces one is. But yeah, you might find that useful for something. But yes, scales, very, very important to weigh out everything. So yes, I'm sort of going through an order of equipment now. We're talking about the most essential thing first. Now, once you've got your scales, you get some ingredients. You could actually start making things using things you have in your kitchen. You can also be imaginative. I wonder if I still have any of these to show you. Yes. Now, if you live in the UK or other European countries where these are sold, I don't know if they're sold in other countries, but you will, I'm sure, instantly recognise these little pots. These little pots. I have a whole collection of these. If you don't know what they're from, they're little cheesecakes, which are quite popular here. I don't eat them because I think they've actually got gelatin in them. It's kind of disgusting. But anyway, my mother loves them. And what they do is they come in these lovely little glass pots with a like aluminium foil tear off lid. So of course you end up with this little pot with no lid. You think, what am I going to do with that? And it seems such a shame to just throw them away. You know, just chuck them in the recycling. You think, sure, I can use that for something, and you end up with a pile of them in the corner. Think, I'm going to use that for something, I just don't know what. So when I started formulating, I actually started using those as mixing pots, essentially. They were my beakers. Because obviously I could put them in the dishwasher, and then you can spray them with alcohol, you know, isopropyl alcohol to sanitize them. And yes, obviously no one wanted them for anything else. The problem with using things that you normally use in your kitchen, if you're using them for both, there is a sort of hygiene question there. Sometimes obviously you might be using ingredients that you wouldn't want to eat, and you're then going to obviously use them in your kitchen again. At least with using those pots, obviously, although they did have food in them, they weren't going to be used for that again. So there is that. But yes, you can, as I say, if you're willing to sort of, you know, take the risk in your kitchen, you can use, you know, your teaspoons and your pots and things. But you do then run into sort of GMP problems. It's good manufacturing practice, and if you are obviously planning on selling your cosmetics someday, you will need to abide by that, which means you will have to use all different equipment. So you might as well get into the habit as early as possible. And just for the sake, you know, safety, hygiene, and so on, it is a good idea. So it really isn't a very large investment you need to make, and the first things you'll need is these lovely beakers. Now, this one is a bit damp because, as I say, I'm actually in the middle of formulating at the moment. I have a nice clean example here of one. That's just how I used it for weighing out the waters. I actually started with, in fact, these exact two beakers. They came together, I think they did, and I got them from, I think it was Bayer's Aromatics, something like that. These are just nice little glass beakers. As you can see, there's a 50 milliliter one and a 100 milliliter one, like this. And when I started, yeah, I got these two. Glass beakers, they're very inexpensive, and again, you can't really go wrong with them. You'll get them anywhere on the internet, and they're all much of a muchness. If you're going to be weighing out, when you're starting out your ingredients, you're probably going to be making quite small batches, which is why I used sort of this size one is fine. Obviously 100 millilitres. If you're making batches, probably about 100 grams, you might be able to fit that in there. Kind of depends, obviously, because if you're weighing oils and things, they don't, you know, a milliliter doesn't necessarily weigh a gram, but you can fit most things in there if you're just making small batches. And if you do a sort of a formulating course, you'll probably see, certainly in a lot of cases, when they do their demonstration videos, all very nice, and they might have sort of, you know, 10 ingredients, each one weighed out into a separate beaker. Now, strictly speaking, that's a good idea because you can obviously weigh it much more accurately. If you're weighing out an oil into here, say, right, and then obviously you start weighing a second oil, if you accidentally pour too much in, you can't take it back out because you won't be able to separate it from the first oil. And that is potentially an issue. On the other hand, I feel there's an issue with weighing them all out into separate beakers as well, because especially with butters and things, you often see they've weighed them out and they put them in the bottom of a beaker. There is no way you're going to scrape all of that butter out of that beaker. It's going to be left in there, which means that because different oils and things as well have different viscosity, so they're going to stick to different proportions to the beaker. So when you start pouring them all into the same beaker, then you're going to leave a load of them on the beaker, and it's not going to be the same amount for each one, which kind of spoils your accurate weighing. So yeah, I just feel there's pros and cons to it, really, and what I always prefer to do is to weigh them out into the same beaker. And even now that I do have lots more beakers, the only reason I have more beakers now is really just because I formulate lots of different things, sometimes on the same day. I tend to still always weigh everything into the same beaker. And you can find some interesting, you know, you get experiments that way as well. Sometimes you do, your hand slips and you, oh, whoops, I poured too much of that. Well, never mind, okay, I'll try it with that amount of oil then. Just note down how much you did put in, take out a bit of one of the other oils, and then sometimes you find, actually, that worked better than my original formula. Right, okay, I will do that then. So, you know, So yes, you can get away with, if you just have a single beaker. If you're going to be making very simple products, just get a beaker and just get one the size that you feel you need. I got 2 to start off with. So I think it's useful having 2, particularly when you start doing emulsions. And then later on, I got a set which included these ones. So this was actually a set which I've taken over all of our dining room cupboards for my stuff. It's terrible. This is this whole set in here. So there's a whole load of these. Like they're all different sizes, all kind of nested in. And me being me, I pack them all back up again neatly every time I use them. Because I'm weird like that. She says, well, she puts them in the wrong way around. That's better. So yeah, these are nice beakers. How many do you get here on? Yeah, I think there's 6 beakers in there. And I don't know how much that cost, but it was not much. I think it was about £5, to be honest. As I said, these were just dirt cheap ones. And you could see a lot of people complained in the reviews of these. If you look carefully, you can see the slightly bizarre measurements that they've chosen to put on them. Unlike what you would expect, obviously, kind of, you know, here we have multiples of 20. And here, obviously, we have it done in 10s. But, and the beakers in this set, they're all like this. And a lot of people complained. They're obviously made by somebody who didn't know how to count. And, well. I think that's part of the reason why they were so cheap. It's actually great because you don't use them. Obviously, I don't think I ever look at those things on it because you're weighing everything. You're not measuring it in millilitres because it's not accurate enough. So, yeah, don't worry. If your graduated measurements on them are total gibberish, you might get some cheaper beakers that way. So, yes, do not worry about that at all. Yes, as I say, I got this whole set of them. If you feel like getting them, get them, because as I say, they are not expensive. But to be clear, if you're just sort of starting out, you don't need them. The reason I tend to have them is because when you use a beaker, obviously, then you go out and wash it. This obviously has just had water in it, and I'm about to put water in it again in a minute, which is why it's a bit wet. But no matter how carefully you dry these, there's this bit around the edge you just can't get to very well. So you end up having to sort of leave them out to dry and sanitize them. So what I find is if I make a lot of products, you know, so I've used a couple of beakers and then I've put them there and then they're just not quite dry, and I don't want to put something in there that's, you know, going to mix up with the water. So I end up getting a little production line of beakers going, like, right, grab another beaker, grab another one, you know, and it's just easier. And sometimes if you're making a complicated thing, you might have not have to. So for example, if you've weighed out your water phase and then your oil phase, and then you want to put your cool down ingredients in another beaker while you're waiting, and so on and so forth. So that's just easier. So yes, starting off, certainly you don't need more than 2 beakers. If you're going to do an emulsion, you see, you might want to weigh out water phase and oil phase in a separate thing. Other little pieces of equipment that you might want. Excuse the fact that this has shea butter on it at the moment because I'm about to take it and clean it, but this is a little scoop. Yeah, as I said, you could use your kitchen teaspoons, but I prefer these. What you could also do is if you go to a cheap kitchen shop, like Bulco or somewhere, you could always get you can get a set of teaspoons for, I don't know, it's less than a £5. And you could use those. And this little scoop is good because it's great for when you get butters and things out. So when you get your shea butter, it's really good at kind of carving a little bit out and just taking a little bit, or you can break off a big block with it depending on how much you want, so it is quite good for that. And it's also good when you've got you get your salts and things to just scoop them. So yeah, and with powders and things, you might actually want a bigger spoon as well if you're weighing out, you'll weigh out 50 grams of something, you probably would, because you don't want to just tip the bag up. Believe me, I've done that. Don't do it. It's disastrous. But when you want little amounts, a little scoop like this is really useful for that. And then if you want to stir things, because because you'll probably want to keep your scoop dry, so you don't want to stir it with that. So you can use one of these little stirrers. You could use glass rods, or it's a little steel one. I've got a couple of these. They usually come in packs of a couple or whatever, which is good. If they don't, you probably want to get more than one, just because if you're making something like, if you're doing an emulsion, say, and you've got an all phase and water phase, and you want to stir them both. So yeah, in fact, with an emulsion, you might even want to make more than that. Kind of, it's up to you, really. I'm going to go and check on my butters. So in terms of your essential starting equipment, obviously you have got your scales, you've got your beakers to put your products in, some kind of scoops, spoons to get things out, and you've got a stirrer, obviously, to stir things. Obviously you will need some packaging to put it in finally, and some, ingredients to start you off. But that is really all you need to get going. Then it really depends on what kind of product you want to make. So we're going to talk about that. So for example, if you're wanting to make particular specialist products, obviously you will need particular specialist equipment. Like for example, I happen to be making soap at the moment, and some of the things you would want for that is obviously some kind of dish to make it in. I make it in this. I also use this for my shampoo bars, that kind of thing. It's a nice big metal tin. I think it actually came with one of my bain-maries from a cheap kitchen shop. And I just like this for this. I also, obviously, I have this nice Pyrex measuring jug. This is what, obviously, you got a beaker of sodium hydroxide there. That will be poured into here to make my lye solution. And that will then be mixed with this silicone spatula. Obviously you can't use wood or anything like that to mix up sodium hydroxide because it will eat it over time. So unfortunately, yes, this is where you do need plastic. Yes, you can find you can get stainless steel ones, can't you? Because even some metal ones can react with it. You have to be careful. So yes, you would need things like this. But obviously, as it's a specialist, bit of a specialist area. But that's something you might want. Obviously, jugs like this. Just to say, this obviously is extremely heavy, as jugs and things go. Delicate scales like these ones, because they weigh down to 0.01 grams, the maximum weight you can put on this is 500 grams, which means I could not put that jug on it to weigh things out. So that's why you really want nice little lab beakers, because it's also the problem with those glass pots. They are relatively heavy, considering they are quite small. So yeah, it's just something to bear in mind. These are very kind of fit for purpose in that they are extremely light, and yeah, that would be ideal. Some other little things that you might want depending on what you're doing. So for example, cut the thing off that. I have a little mini whisk. I actually got this in the Tiger shop. What's it called? Flying Tiger, I believe it's called now. It keeps changing its name. But yes, little mini whisk. Again, it's silicone. I do have a full-sized one which I use for some products, but this is so useful because if you've got a little pot, and especially if you've got like a lot of powdered ingredients, like when you make shampoo bars, if you've got a huge whisk, it's going to go everywhere, and this is just so much better. Yes, so for some products, again, this is essential, but obviously it depends what you're making. since I just mentioned shampoo bars, I would also say, for example, a bar press, like this one. You do not need, unless you are making particular bar products. But if you do want to make something like a shampoo bar, I've tried making it in soap moulds and things like that just to see if it works. It doesn't. So you put that in and you push it out and your shampoo bar comes out. So yes, that sort of thing. Just like, what else we've got here? Bath bomb molds. Yeah, okay. Essential if you were making that. I've got my eyeshadow pressing kit in there as well, which is a lovely little thing. Assembled by me, actually. It's not a real eyeshadow pressing kit because that would cost hundreds of pounds, but it's actually a wax seal, but it's plain and it works brilliantly. Assembled with ribbon and some pressing medium and anyway. So depending on what you want to make, as I say, will depend on specialist equipment that you might need. But a couple of things I would say you definitely want to get. Firstly, a couple of bain-maries. Now you want 2 of these. Obviously I have one here. The other one is on my stove currently. Now some people will say, oh, you don't need these. And I've seen some lovely ideas of complicated setups using beakers balanced on cookie cutters in in a saucepan to sort of make this double boiler. Seriously, don't do it. Buy yourself 2 of these, okay? If you're just going to make balms, things like that, so for example at the moment I'm making soaps, so I'm just melting some butter. The same if you wanted to make a balm, lip balm or something like that, so you just want to melt butter, you only obviously need 1, but if you're going to make an emulsion, you will need 2. Seriously, you go to a cheap kitchen shop or you look somewhere on the internet, you can pick these up for a £5, so why would you not buy one? You may obviously already have one in your kitchen. If you make chocolate or something, you will need them, but as I say, it's best to obviously buy your own. And yes, as I say, it's just not worth the effort of trying to do it, balancing a beaker on something, because then obviously what happens is, I've tried to do this, you have to get the water outside the beaker so carefully measured, because otherwise the beaker is unstable and it will tip into the water, and that is so likely to happen. And of course the beaker gets incredibly hot, so when you finished heating it you have to get it out. Now if you've ever tried lifting a little glass beaker like this, or a little tiny one like this, wearing a bloody great pair of oven gloves, yeah, it's just not worth it. You think, oh, for Christ's sakes, for under 10 quid I can get 2 bain-maries, and then that's fine. So do that. Weigh them out in your beakers, or I mean, certainly that bain-marie that I have on the stove at the moment, that is so light I tend to weigh ingredients in it now, just because it's easier, because it only weighs about 100 grams. So that's a smaller one that I have. I've got 2 different sizes just for, and that makes that so much easier when you're doing an emulsion. Obviously then you've got your 2 bain-maries, you measure everything out, you measure your cool down phase things in a beaker. Yeah, super easy. So if you're making anything that involves melting anything, butters and things like that, you can, if you are, you just want to experiment with something to see if it works, you can always melt things in a microwave. I have done it, but it can go disastrously wrong, burning things. So it is better to melt them over the stove properly. And certainly if you're making large batches of things, that's what you would need to do. But yeah, so bain-maries, definitely. Just look on the internet for them, yeah, you'll find them very inexpensive. On the subject of emulsions then, if you are going to make your emulsions, another essential piece of equipment would be cooking thermometers. And again, you will need 2 of them. I've got them out here because obviously you will also need them for soap making. Ideally, when you're making balms and things, it's a good idea to use them, but you may not need them, because if you just want to melt the butters, you can see when it's melted. They do talk about using the heat and hold method to stop your balm becoming grainy, but that is generally held to be a myth, so I wouldn't worry about it. But you can hopefully see. These, they're just very cheap thermometers, but these, I think they call them sugar thermometers for jam making. And these are perfectly adequate. Just make sure obviously they're very tough kind of thermometers. I mean, if you're going to be soap making, you're going to plunge one of them into sodium hydroxide. So, but yeah, you're not going to get them too hot. So, but just me, I'll make sure they're quite solid things. These are good because they're actually cooking ones. As you can see, they've got these little weighted things on that's supposed to clip them onto a saucepan or something. It doesn't always work on your sort of double boiler. It kind of depends on the angle you get them at, but and that makes them nice and solid, so they don't tip too easily because you can move this up and down. So yeah, these are nice ones, and again, I got them online. Kitchen Craft apparently. But yeah, they were not expensive. So yes, whenever you're mixing two things together, both obviously in soap making, you do the same thing in emulsions. You want the two things to be at the same temperature, so it's important you are monitoring this. Oil and water, for example, obviously when you're heating the emulsions, they won't heat at quite the same rate, so it's really useful to have a thermometer in both of them so you can keep an eye on things. And speaking of which, I'm going to get my sodium hydroxide going, so excuse me a moment. Gradually steam up the beaker. So yes, you can see how useful those things are. Obviously, speaking of specialist things, if you're going to be making soaps, you'll want things like soap moulds. I recommend these nice stretchy silicone ones, they're very good. Much more robust. You can use the old-fashioned wooden ones with cutter if you like, they're good. But yes, just like, yes, bar press moulds, various things like that, if you're going to be making those kinds of products. But you can see you really don't need very much. Obviously I mentioned earlier about a little spray bottle to put your isopropyl alcohol in. This is super useful, and what you will do is you will spray into all these beakers and any other equipment that you're using before you use it. This is a wonderful stuff too. One of the few things that can get coconut oil out of. So just thought I'd mention that while I was here. One other thing that you would want, some way of measuring pH. Now, often what people will say is you start off with a pH testing strip if you're just starting out. Personally, I do have one of these, and you can see I've still got quite a lot of them left. And that is because I just found it absolutely hopeless. Because whenever I tested something, I was looking at these colour things, you're supposed to see which one it looks most like, and I was like, well, okay, that square looks most like that one looks like that one, that one like that, and that one like that one. So I have no idea what the pH is. Which is why I got one of these little pen ones. No, actually these ones are phenomenally cheap. And considering that, actually it doesn't work that badly. It's just, sometimes it has a funny 5 minutes and goes peculiar, which is why I actually recently I invested in a proper one, which is this one, which is expensive, but it's a very nice one. You can see all this stuff. I mean, that cost a couple of £100, so don't get one of those unless you actually need one. But a couple of things which are not expensive, which I would definitely recommend getting because they will just make your life easier. So one is something like this. A milk frother, I don't know why anyone would want frothy milk. But hey. And if you just... Super useful, battery operated, and it just... it does that. You will get a very sore arm mixing emulsions if you don't have one of these. So it definitely falls into a bit like the Bain Marie. It's not actually essential, but get one. Again, honestly, I don't know how much this was, but it definitely wasn't more than £10. And it is just so much easier when you're mixing emulsions. You can mix them with a mini whisk, but don't, just get one of these. And the other thing, which will make your life so much easier, is a set of these. Some of these are out at the moment because they're being washed or dried, but you can see these are little glass pipettes. And then, just like at the other end of the box, you'll have these. So all you have to do is pop them on. And you now have a pipette, and you can take them apart and wash them. Now, I'll be honest, they're not the easiest things in the world to clean. I found you can buy incredibly small brushes. I think they're for cleaning straws that you can take around with you. And you can just about get one of those, down it, rinse it out, and then I found drying them in an oven was kind of the best way to do it. They are difficult to clean, but the reason they're super useful is simply because obviously if you are taking out, you've got an oil, like how are you going to pour that accurately? So, and for things like your preservatives, things like that, you want them to be accurate, because not enough and they won't work, and too much and they're going to sensitise your skin. So, that is just super useful for getting small amounts out and putting them into things, and that is one of the ways that you avoid overfilling your beaker and putting too much of something in. So yes, very useful. Now you can buy plastic pipettes, but they're impossible to clean. In fact, I actually have one here. It came free with something, and I haven't used it because I don't like plastic. But you can see they're really flimsy and they will break quite easily, and you can't clean that. So they're called like disposable pipettes, they call them. Well, the world is swimming in plastic, and we do not want to dispose of any plastic. So glass ones are just so much better. As I say, this again, this was super cheap. I think it was literally a couple of quid for a set of 10, which you will need, because obviously if you just weighed out an oil, then you're going to weigh out another oil. You don't really want to stick the same pipette in and mix your oils up, so you can just keep using another one when you need it. And as I say, you just have to be patient with them. With cleaning them, it's a bit of a nuisance, but it is possible to do it. It's not so much cleaning them actually. If you've got a small brush, that's okay. It's the drying them out that's a bit of a nuisance. But I found putting them in the oven was the best solution. So yes, I'm having fun now going through my cupboard looking at all the different things. I forget how many different things that I use. But as I say, you've got scales, beakers, a scoop and a stirrer, you can get started. They're just a few other things that you want. As I say, if you do want to make anything in melting anything, get a Bain Marie. If you want to make emulsions, get 2 and get a pair of thermometers. But things like this will just make your life so much easier. As I say, a milk frother, very good idea. A set of pipettes. Yeah, and I mean, like all these things, you'll find you pick more stuff up as you go along, and you may decide, as I'm going to invest in a nicer pH meter. But to be honest, a little cheap one will do you fine to start off with, or you may get on well with pH strips. Depends where you get them from, maybe, I don't know. But yes, obviously, if you're making oil-based products, your anhydrous products, you won't need to do any pH testing. But if I got the more expensive ones simply because I'm selling my products now, and it's important to make sure they are pH balanced, particularly when you're using natural preservatives, and obviously you need to make sure you have the right pH for your preservative system to work. So, but yeah, I definitely wouldn't worry about that if you're just going to make a few products for home use. And if you're following, I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, if you're following, sort of recipes, I would say, rather than formulating yourself, and you are making them from a very, a reliable source, not something you've just found on the internet, you don't know where it's from, please don't do that. We will talk about that in another video. But if you've got a reliable a source for them, then you don't really need to do pH testing because the people have already done it. So if you're using those ingredients, you'll know they're safe to use anyway. So it's really when you start formulating your own sort of custom products, and if you start working with more complicated ingredients, obviously you're going to need to check that. So yes, I hope that's helped some people get some ideas of the sorts of things that they might need if they want to have a go at formulating at home. Obviously, in terms of the actual suppliers, I'm not recommending particular ones because it really does depend on where you live. Cheap kitchen shops is your best bet for stuff like that. Most people have got a kind of a budget kitchen equipment chain in their country, but it really depends where you are. And obviously the internet is the best place. I personally do not like using these mass manufacturers, Amazon and eBay and places like that, because of their sort of ethical track record. But unfortunately, sometimes it is the only place that you can find things. I mean, Amazon certainly does all of these things, but you can find them maybe in local retailers as well if you prefer to do that. So yeah, happy formulating, and I will see you in the next video.